Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. I hope you're having an awesome time. We are about to kick off the next episode of Laravel microservices, where we're talking about building microservices in Laravel. Should we, shouldn't we? Let's put a practical example together and see what we're going to do. So, without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight into it today. I am having an absolutely awesome day so far, so I just want to get stuck into the code and start talking about awesome stuff. So, where did we get last time? We built a basic concept of an authentication service. We also started building out our client service, and we were talking about should orders be its own separate service. Hello again. You have to tell me how to pronounce your names. Some people joining in. I am very, very bad at that sort of stuff. Let's start orb stack. Let's get that spinning up. I am fantastic. I hope you're good as well. Let's get going. Let's just spin this up. And bam, we've got Redis straight away. No Docker desktop needed. We are using orb stack, which is honestly a hell of a lot better. It's so much better than Docker desktop. The UI is nicer. It just uses less resources. I'm just so happy with it. Hello from Nigeria. I hope you're doing well, and I hope your day is going just as well as mine. So, where were we? We've got an identity service. We've got our template service down here, which we're duplicating where we need to. Got our identity service, got our client service. And we're about to start building out our services around clients. So I'm going to start with that. We want to be able to list clients, register clients. Everything's going to be authenticated. So at this point, let's just crack on, right? You didn't miss much, Rob. Don't worry. I've just been talking about how awesome my day is going. And that's about it so far. I am going to be in London next week for a conference, which will be exciting. And then it sounds like I'm visiting Berlin next month for another conference. So I'm going to be super busy soon. Let's make a controller. And what we want is we're going to stick this in clients just in case we add additional parts to this. So what we want is an index controller that is invocable. That is us starting off. So test-wise, let's make sure it's all configured correctly. Test suite, yep. Test suite, please. What we're going to want to do is I'm just going to create a directory here. We're going to have clients, and we're going to have list clients test. That is our first test there. Yeah, this is a playlist. It is already a playlist. I've made a microservices playlist, so you should be able to kind of subscribe to that nice and easily. So let's start adding this. Let's add in that index controller. And let's simplify that and we'll click through. So let's do what we always do and declare some strict types. I don't know why that has got a squiggly. Squiggly, why are you there? Clients index. Okay, so this is just because I've got multiple Laravel apps on PHP Storm. It's just going, why are you doing this to me? But that is okay. We can handle that. So at this point, we are assuming we are authenticated. So because our auth is separated, we have to do our authorization slightly differently because we don't actually have that user model to respond back to. So if we look at our middleware quickly, service authentication, what we've got is we've got token. Have we got it? Yes. If we don't have that, what we're going to do is identity there. And let's just do like a quick dime dump on identity to see what we actually have. Before we do anything, let's make sure that we're not going to break. We should be good. So let's come over to our test here. So it will throw an exception if not authenticated. Because this is mostly for internal use. We don't have to worry too much about responding as an API because it's an internal API. We're throwing an exception, which our exception handler will capture and just return back to us. So what we need here is we want to do a GET request. The URI we want to go to is going to be the one that responds to that index controller. And the reason I do the action approach here is partially for click-through on my IDE, but also if I ever change the naming of my URLs, I don't want to have to go through all of my test suite, change everything. It starts to get really frustrating. Okay, so here what we need to do is we are expecting this to throw an authentication exception. Let's just simplify that one. And let's just quickly compose a test. So, failed asserting that a section message is thrown. Ooh, what happened here? Throws. The exception is that. So when we go to this, let's open up Insomnia and let's start playing with that. Yeah, definitely. Named routes are so much easier. What was this? Oh, this was our SaaS startup that we played with. Awesome. Let's just kind of delete that. Come back to this, make it a GET request. Let's make sure our windows are organized. Yeah, Insomnia there, code there. We are good. So let's just go a serve. Let's get that running. Here is that. Let's make sure we are going to the right place. And then we are going to just go straight to clients. Invalid authentication. Fantastic. So at this point, we are failing, which is expected. Let's open up another terminal here for kind of our artisan. And what we want is a tinker. We don't want that. We want to say cache. Is it like a cache all or a cache list? No. Oh, this is a pain. This is a pain. Okay, so can I add a new data source of Redis? I can. Oh, beautiful. 127.0.0.1. Download those missing drivers. So what I want to be able to do is just connect to my local Redis. Apply, connect. Let's open up Redis. Refresh that. Refresh, give me my data. Where is my data? Okay, so let's go to here, get info. 6379. Let's quickly go through and go and properties. 6379. That is connecting. We have Redis available. Why are you not listing anything? Console. Okay, so this is where my use of Redis is minimal. So let's just go to like Redis CLI list all. Get all keys. Retrieving all existing keys. Keys star. So apparently we have nothing. Okay. Properties. Let's swap that to bind to anything. Test that connection. Come back. Refresh. Apparently, we have got nothing in Redis right now. So what we want to do is come over to here. We're going to create another request. This one is going to go straight to the identity. So let's just do an aserv here. This is our endpoint. We want to do a post request to there. This will accept application JSON. And we will also want our content type to be application JSON. So let's add our body. We are going to register. Let's make sure this is running. Email field is required. Fantastic. So let's log in. Our name is going to be Steve. Our email is going to be steve@travel.com. And our password is going to be password. We now have a token. Fantastic. So we can come over to here. Our authorization needs to change to that. Apparently that is invalid. So now we can come back and start to look at how we can debug. Not a problem. If you've got to go, enjoy the rest of your day. Watch the replay. Let me know your thoughts and we can catch up. Okay, so nothing is actually appearing in Redis. So I'm not worrying about that right now. That's really not important to me. What I want to know is if I can die and dump on request headers all. So we've got a bearer, 488, which matches. What happens if we die and dump on token? Let's just do that. We've got the token. Cache get token. Coming back as null. So apparently that isn't being stored in cache. So let me come down to env here. Let's make sure that our cache connection is Redis there. On our identity, we also want to make sure that our cache driver is Redis. Redis information, it should have a shared Redis connection. Should be the exact same thing. So if I come over to here and say open terminal for Redis and just do like, I don't know, keys star, keys not found. Okay, that is not what I want to do. Terminate all that. Terminate that. Mounts, show logs, ready to connect. Redis is starting. Do I need to do anything in my details over here? Container, warehouse data, got that going. All of that is working. I don't think I need any setup or anything specific running. Something funky dunky is going on. Is there a better way to look at Redis maybe? Where is the code to store the key in Redis? So that is over in identity, app services, authentication service. We do that down here. Cache put the token as a key. There's an ID and there's a role, and we're going to add it for 5 hours. So let's die and dump on the token there. So if we come back to here, we're going to come and log in instead. The JSON we're going to send over is that. That is there. So now let's do a cache get token. Does that exist? That does exist. Let's maybe manually do it. So if I get that, delete that, come back over to here, and make sure our headers is sending over the right thing. Hello, Scott. So at this point, so we're getting null here. Let's close everything down so we're not losing ourselves. So authentication should be working. Client atinker use cache get is coming back as null over here. So if I instead come over to here, and is it because I'm using it as cache, not a database? That could be the question. So I'm going to open this up in a terminal, and we're going to atinker here instead. It's because we're not setting it up as a database. So perhaps in identity, instead of using cache down here to cache put, we need to go like Redis command. Let's go have a look. Let's go have a look at the docs and see how we need to get around doing this. Redis, database Redis. Introduction. I've already got Redis installed. Let's go make sure it is installed on the client side as well. Yes, that is installed. Config already done. Default database 0. Configuring the connection scheme. Clusters, no. Clusters. Redis facade, alias. So finds by default no Redis aliases includes because it will conflict with the Redis class name provided by the PHP Redis extension. So I need to make sure that this is added to our aliases. So let's come down to our identity config app. Come down to aliases. Right down. Keep going. Bada bing, bada boom. And then we want to do the exact same thing in here. Class alias. Redis. All good. Close all of that. The next thing we want to be looking at doing is serialization, not super interested in that. Redis get, Redis set. So we want to do like a Redis set and get. So down in our identity services here, we want to set token value. Is that using the right Redis? Yes, we don't want cache anymore. Cache is not important. Redis. Delete that because we want to use Redis directly. So then let's go back to login. We have got that. That is working. So now if we come back over to our here, we can then refresh strings, identity database. Awesome. We've got stuff being stored. We may have to fiddle a little bit. Why does it return the token using a message? It's something just easy right now. We're going to refactor that in a little while. So in our client HTTP middleware service authentication, what we want to do is actually use Redis get token, not cache get. So let's come back to here and hit that. Couldn't connect to server, probably because it's not running. Come back to client, a serve. I say 1,000, perfect, send null. So this is probably a naming thing because we've got an identity database which is coming back from the identity service, and I'm assuming it's looking for a client database. So if we come down to database connections, not important, Redis, prefix, app name, something database, something dark side. So what we want to look for here is the Redis prefix. In our EMV, we want to set this specifically down here. And this is going to be identity database. So now if we come back to here, are we going to look it up in the right place? No. Apparently not. Options, default, string slug, bloody. Oh, it needs an extra underscore. What's going on? Okay, how can we best do this? That is probably the latest one. Come back over to here, swap that out for that. We got an array back. Fantastic. We're doing something. We have progress. Redis get token. It's coming back as an array. So what we want to look at is how can we serialize this data nicely? So we are able to get it here. So instead we'll do Redis get token, drop that DD. This now should be giving us something. We're getting an array back. But that array is a string. So in our identity service down here, what we want to do is grab this and JSON encode it where the value is that. When we what I usually like to do is JSON throw an error here. Just keep things a little bit clean. Works for me. So let's just JSON encode set JSON decode identity. So now if we send that request, come over to here, refresh that one. That's an array ID role user. This is a one FP something FP. Delete, send, JSON encode, bang, bang, done. We now have something we can use. So close all those. Can we drop that one? Okay. And let's drop that one. Close that database panel. Identity now works. Over here, what we want to be doing is in our middleware, what we want to do is request merge. Is there a way we can just like extend? You can merge attributes, add identity, JSON decode, where the JSON is the identity, the associative is true. So we're just going to pass it as an array. And the flags that we want to add are just JSON throw on error, because we want to ensure that, you know, things die where they need to. Excellent. So at this point, we can come over to our index controller, and let's just do a die and dump on request all. Nothing. Fantastic. Request attributes all. We have got one. That works. So we can authenticate at this point. We've authenticated. We know that this person is correct, so we don't need to assume anymore. Now we need to look at the authorization. So because we aren't using the typical approach, what we need to do perhaps is create a new services. And again, we're just going to create a, we'll create an authorization service here. And public function, something like, you know, can they list clients? This will return a Boolean value. This will take a string as a role. ideally, this will actually return that, because we should be able to do a lookup on that one quite easily. So we could do return is return, I don't know, in array. The needle is going to be the role passed in, and the haystack is going to be this. We could just do like role admin, role manager, role warehouse. We'll try this. We'll set that as a strict comparison. So we need to get that authorization service, make sure it's injected. Private read-only authorization service. And we're going to do a quick dime dump on this service, list clients, whether role is role try from request attributes get. What we're giving them is, so we're going to want to go for sort of like identity dot role, and let's just see what that gives us. Target class authorization does not exist. Okay, so that's their app. Let's make sure this is correct. App. Try again. Try from argument value must be of type string, null given. So instead of using attributes, we could try a request merge. Let's use identity. And then we'll just kind of use that as well. Instead of using attributes, see if we can just kind of do that. So let's just do a request get instead. Try from, okay, so dime dump on request all. Got that. Let's do a request get identity. Identity. Can we use dot notation? No. So we have to do this way, which sucks. So instead we will go data get request all identity dot role. User, perfect. So we can just use request get like that. Try from that. False. So what we can do is, if that fails, we can throw a new exception. We can create a new exception, and we're authorization exception. Extends exception. The wrong one. Let's simplify. And here we can throw new authorization exception, where the message is invalid or inadequate role to access this resource. Code, we will use status, unauthorized. Actually, no, we use forbidden. Keep it at that. Then if they are allowed, then what we want to do is list clients. So if they're a basic user, they are not allowed to access. Yeah, you've got to use name parameters, right? We got them now. Why does it return the token using a message key? We already talked about that. So what we want to do quickly now, come over to identity, authentication service, user create data, controllers, auth, register. I'm going to create user. I'm going to override this quickly. And I'm just going to add the role manually quickly for this request. Role admin. We're going to set it like that for now. Come over to identity, a migrate fresh, reserve. Come down to here, and I'm going to drop that quickly. Come over to the login. Let's create a new login, invalid credentials. Okay. Register. Come back over to here, and we want to add a name for Steve. We should now have a token, and this person should be the correct permissions. Yes, we now have the correct permissions. So in our index controller here, what we want to do is artisan. This is on clients. Make a resource, client resource. We want to return a new collection response where the data is wrong one. Return new collection resource. Response. The data is a client resource. Collect the resource, and we will work on. So this is going to return responsible. Let's make sure that is working. That's returning an array. This can now be read-only. We can come over to this, and we can start working on making our API nice. So what we want to return is, from a client perspective, our clients are super clean and super simple. We've got a name and an email and a company. So we want to pass through their ID. This resource ID, name, this resource name, email, this resource email. When were they created? And we're going to pass through a new date resource. The resource is this resource created at. So up the top here, what we want to do is just set that the property is client or resource. So that's going to underline all of that. So up here, I can make this final, add some script types, and we can say property read string ID, property read string name, property read string email, and we'll also add a property read carbon interface for the created at. And we'll add the updated at, but we don't actually need it. We're not using it right now. So when I come back to here, the click-through works. It's fantastic, isn't it? So now if we come back to here, great. Come back to Artisan, Atinker, App Models, Client, Factory, Count. I'm going to create, I don't know, 10 quickly. Come back to here, refresh. Why are you not? Because I haven't actually set a query yet. Silly Steve. I'm just do it in line quickly. Client query all. Get those message to build it all. Okay, my bad. Do that all the time. Send that. Perfect. We have got clients. That's not the perfect API, but it will work. Realistically, we will want to paginate these. Tinker, 10 more. 10 more. This should now paginate. Not paginating. Oh, my wife brought me a coffee. She's just showing off to people on stream. That's all it is.
That's very nice of you. Next time you can have first.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Okay, so we are authenticating with our separate service. We are getting results. The collection response isn't supporting the pagination right now, but we will worry about that later. We've got that catching that data get. That's all good. Throwing an exception. This query is fine for now. This is mostly for admin control at this point, so we don't need to worry too much. Let's just do that. Add a couple of doc blocks because they are pretty. This is probably a typo. I've always got typos going on. Eventually, I'd move this over to a language file. And that I'd love to be able to kind of auto detect. So I could just pass through like the request and it would just, bish, bash, bosh. But we'll look at refactoring that later. For right now, we can list all clients. That is what we wanted to get out of that. That is working. Page equals 2. 3, 2, 1. That's paginating nicely. It's not showing the pagination, but we'll look at that. We'll look at how we can resolve that in a little while. Identity we don't need right now. Client we are still working on. So let's come back down to our API. We want to be able to create a client next. So our next aim is to commit this. So git status, git commit, or git add, git commit. And what we need to say is moving Redis usage to Redis DB over cache, listing clients and authorization Let's push that up quickly. Now we can come to here and we can say a make controller. The controller we're going to want is a store controller. We're also going to want to make a request clients store request. So let's hook that up and start looking at how we can handle this. Store request, no, store controller. Declare some strict types there. We won't need either of those. I haven't used stubs yet because each one's so small that it seems almost pointless. So let's go to store request. Click through to that one. Drop that. Drop that. Declare strict types. We need a name, which is required. We need, this should be minimum of 2, max of 255, so it fits in the database column. We also want to make sure that this is a string. Let's just go create clients table. Email is unique, so we need to go to here and say email required email, and then rule unique on the clients table under email. Then we want to be able to pass through a company. The way I'd like, can you redo everything you did in the last 45 minutes? Debugging, no, Chris, this is not acceptable. So the company, I want this to be nullable, but it should be a string. So the idea here is that the company pass-through is going to be like a first or create. So you can just dynamically create a new company by passing it through when you're creating a client. Otherwise, it's just too many API calls. You've got to then look up a company to attach to the request, and it just gets messy. So what I want to be able to do is to be able to return a payload. So public function payload. So over in client app HTTP, I'm going to create a new payload, and we're going to create a new payload called new client. This new client, we're going to say public function construct. This is going to have a private read-only string name. It's also going to have a read-only email and a read-only string for the company, which means that realistically this should be required. We'll set that to a min of 2 and a max of 255 as well. So public function to array. This should return name, the email, but we don't want it to return the company at this point. We want to be able to public static function from array. So the array coming in as data, then we're going to return a new client. Let's just make sure that namespace is correct. Return new client, where the name is data name, where the email is data email, and the company is data company. What I'm going to do is use an array shape by saying that the name is always a string the email is always a string, and the company is always a string. That way, that is always going to work. Then I can grab this and say that we're actually going to return that like that. Let's just clean all of this up, and there we go. We've got something going on. That's currently not used, so I'm going to use that as a public property because I will use that later down the line. So we want our store request to return a new client. Return new client. Oh, realistically, we can just use like a new client here, where we're setting things like the name as this string name to string. Then we're going to do the email as this string email to string, and the company is this string company to string. So that is creating all of that. Could you use spread operator? Yeah, I suppose you could do, but I like to have a little bit more control. Like I could. I could do that. That should, in theory, work. I'm not actually using it though, so I'm going to keep it like this because I want to be able to kind of tweak things as I go. Store request is there. So at this point, we can get a payload. What we then want to do is have a commands clients, and we are going to create new client, public function construct, private read-only portal database, public function handle. We are going to get that new client as a payload coming in, and we should be returning a model back, but most specifically it should be a client. So return transaction. We're going to attempt twice, and the callback is going to be client query create, where the attributes are payload to array. Somewhat simple. Unknown parameter attempt. Attempts to. That's the default, so I don't actually need to. So Portal is something that I've built in Launchpad, which just injects the database manager and gives us a way to run a transaction. It is something that I use a lot. So this database transaction, try and run this. At this point, we should have a client. So we can say client equals something. Public function construct. What we want to do is pull in that command. So private read-only create new client as a command. Namespace issues again. Problem with doing it this way. App, there we go. So we've got a command. So we know we can create the client. So we can try to say that our client is this command handle, where the payload is, we're just going to say payload there. Payload equals request payload. We're going to use that first to create the company. And then we can say catch anything that is throwable as an exception. and we will simplify that, create a new exception. We are going to call this just a write exception because we're having issues writing to the database, basically. Extends exception. This is for internal use, these services. So, adding these contextual style exceptions makes a lot more sense. So here we can just throw new write exception where the message is exception get message, the code is exception get code, and the previous is the exception itself. So we're just wrapping the exception that's thrown in something specific to us. So at that point, we've got a client. Eventually, we'll just return the client. But first, we need to look at creating this company. So we've got the command here. Also going to want to have a way to create the company. Companies. We'll say first or create. Again, public function construct. We're going to pull the portal in again, so we can say private read-only portal of the database, public function handle. This is going to take in a string for the name. It should return a model or a company. Return this database transaction. Callback is going to be company query create, where the attributes is name, come to here, website. Let's just go make sure that our create companies table, we want to make this nullable. Okay, so the email being passed through there, first we'll create, we're going to do it this way. So by default, the email being assigned on the new client let's also go company ID is going to be this company there. So we can add company ID as a string. So where are we? Store controller here. We're getting the payload. So let's dump on that payload quickly. And let's test it out. Let's just duplicate this. Duplicate. Create client. This is going to be a post request to clients. The JSON that we're going to send over. The name for the client we are going to say is Laravel. The email that we're going to use is going to be taylor@laravel.com. And okay, so the client is going to be actually Taylor Otwell, and the company is going to be Laravel. So if we send that, we're getting that new client coming back. So what we want to do is private read-only first or create for create company. Me and my spelling. Okay, so first things first, try to create the company. So company equals this create company handle, where the name is payload company. The email is payload email. We will catch anything that's throwable as an exception, and we will literally do the exact same thing as this. And at this point, let's just dump on that company, and let's see what happens. Target class first or create does not exist. That is fine. Let's just fix up a couple of these things quickly. Write exception, that is capital A. Authorization, capital A. First or create, A. Now try again. Code must be of type int string given. So, we are having an issue here. Int, I'm going to cast that quickly. Integrity constraint. So we're getting somewhere. Migrate fresh. Try again. Not null constraint, company's email. So we are getting somewhere. So in this part here, we didn't say email. We have now got a company. Let's migrate fresh again. Let's just make sure we're clean. Store controller. At this point, we've got a company. Handle, payload. So what we want to do on this payload is be able to, we don't want it to be read-only anymore. This part can be read-only. This part can be read-only, but we want to be able to replace the company. So before we say to array, what we want to do is public function company string company. This is then going to return a new client again. This company is company, turn this. So then on our close out some of these windows that we don't need, authorization exception, clients table, store controller. Here, we've got a company here. So before we do this, what we want to do is say payload equals payload company, where the company is company get key. Then that will create the client, and we can return a new model response where the data is the client itself, and the status is status created. That we need to create a new resource, no, we don't, we've already got one. A new client resource, where the resource is client. Fantastic. Are you with me here? I kind of flew through that a little bit, so I will run back through that. This could throw an exception. It could also throw something that is throwable that we are not aware of. Let's do that, and let's make this read-only. So we start by validating. Then, once we've validated, we want to create the company. First thing we need, first we'll create, let's get that company. Then we're going to assign the company to override the payload, because the company that's coming in on the request is different to the company that we actually want to assign it to. Then we try to create that client. Once we've created that client, we return a new model response. So, test it. Bam, we got it. So what we want to do now is let's list clients. We've got one. So let's come over to here. Let's make a resource. Make resource. And we want to create a company resource. So here, this belongs to a company. It could be a new company resource. The resource is this when loaded, and the relationship is company. There we go, we got that. And let's just make sure that's all working. So company, this one loaded, isn't loading, that's fine. Come over to here, clean this up, declare some strict types, make that final, swap this into an array. ID is this resource ID. Name of the company is this resource name. The email for the company is this resource email. We're going to have a website for the company. So we can say this resource website. That's all we want right now. We could add like the resource. There we go. We could add like the created if we really wanted to. So you can say new date resource, and then where the resource is this resource created that. Then we come over to here, make this final, declare some strict types, add the property read string for the ID, property read string for the name, property read string for the email, property read string for the website, and property read carbon interface for the created app, and property read carbon interface for the updated app. So come back to this company resource. All of these are now fine. Where are we? Where are we? So at this point, we're all good. What we're probably going to want to do is, let's say, composer require sparsely Laravel query builder. So because of the sort of application this is, we might want to include things more often later down the line. So if we come over to our index controller down here, we are trying to get the latest clients. So instead we can use query builder for the subject is, what happened there? The subject is client query. I'm going to get the latest, paginate. What we also want to do is allow includes. The includes we want to allow is the company. So then if we come here, we can also say and include equals company, and we then include the company for that resource. So to summarize, when we create a new client, by default, we take the email of the person creating the company as the email for the company. It can then be overridden later on, and we're all good. But less API requests to get stuff up and running. Nice and simple stuff going on there. So we can create companies. I'm not going to look at like managing companies at this stage. So let's look at client, orders, register. Do we want a separate service for orders? That is a question I am going to pose to you now. If we are following real microservice patterns, we would do. It would make sense. I'm not 100% sure if we want to, but it could be useful. I'm going to post that out to you guys watching. Anyone watching, jump in the chat. Tell me, do you want orders to be a separate service, or do you want this to be a macro service? In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy the coffee my wife made me. And contemplate the meaning of life. And commit things to Git. So Git status, let's Git add, Git commit, creating new clients and listing clients. So I'm not actually going to add any company resource endpoints or anything because they're kind of a side effect at this point. So someone has said, in the interest of speed and streaming, just throw orders in with another service. Let's do that. Okay, so template. We are going to copy, paste as an orders service. Let's just copy all that across. Otherwise, we could end up spending 5 days watching you create Laravel skeletons. That is a good point. So did I get the wrong impression from what you just said there? Did you want orders to be a separate service? Or did you want orders just to be on clients? It would make sense to be on clients because it is directly related, but you know. No. Keep them with clients. Okay, so let's just go to there. Actually, tell you what we'll do. We are here. Let's just rm minus rf services orders go. That's gone. We are good. We are good. So, okay, clients. Let's come down to roots. Come down to here. We'll fill that in later. We'll look at updating and deleting clients another time. But right now, let's look at listing out orders. So, come over to client artisan here. So a make controller. Okay, we'll have to write this again. A make controller. We're going to put in orders. In controller, this will be invocable. So index controller for orders. We're going to import this as an alias, and we're just going to say orders index. And up here, where we've got this, we're going to say as clients index. Sort that out. Orders index. Keep identity with clients as well. It's 100%. It is not actually a user logs in and then they are able to access clients. So it's separated. So order index, we want to come over to here. This will have a string for a ULID coming through for that client in question. declare my strict types. We're keeping the standard request. Let's say final there. So what we need to do for this is, does this client exist? But also get all orders for this client. Return the response. So this is our order of what we need to do. So we need to do a does this client exist? Based on what's being passed in. So I'm going to create a query up here because it's going to be a little bit bigger. Directory queries orders. Create a new class, fetch orders for client. Public function handle. We're going to pass through a string for the ULID. This should return a collection. So at this point, what we need to do is, we haven't even modeled the orders, have we? We have not. Let's go ahead and do that. Make model order minus mf. Come down to our database, migrations, orders. So declare some strict types because that's what we do. Make this static with a return type of void, ULID ID as the primary key. So the order itself, let's go to our Notion doc. Was it in here? Distribution. Here we go. Order item, and shipment. So basically this and this is then going to move to client, and then distribution will have shipments and other stuff. So we have a string. Let's move this to this side. So we have a table string status, which will have a default. We are then going to have a table JSON shipping information as a JSON object. Table JSON billing as a JSON object. We'll fiddle with that in a little bit. And then it will have a weight. So this will be an integer. Table, this will be an unsigned big integer of weight. It could be a huge thing. We'll default that to 0 though. And we're also going to have another string which is relating to the client, because we don't actually have a relation. No, we do have a relationship here because it's part of the same order. So perfect. We can just add that as a foreign. Table foreign ULID for client ID, where we're going to index that. It should be constrained, and we can cascade. That is that part so far. That's only belongs to. So now we need to come over to our enums and say, let's create an order status as an enum. This will return a string. We will have a case of submitted, an order submitted, an order is pending, processing, so we're processing your order. We are packing your order. We are fulfilled. No case shipping. These are all things that you can manually change where you need to. So we'll add a draft. So we've got a draft order submitted, pending, processing, packing, shipping, and it's been fulfilled. So we are building an order. We've submitted our order. We're pending payment. Payments come in, so we're going to process that. Once the payment has been processed, we're going to start packing. Once we finish packing, we are shipping that. And once it has arrived at your location, we are fulfilled. That is, yeah, that's that. So we can say order status, draft value. Come back to here, make sure that namespace fixes there. Do that. And we will simplify that. So we got a status, await, shipping and billing, and then a client. This can be nullable because it isn't needed to start with. All of that works. That is all good. So let's come over to our factory for the order. And what I like to do is keep the database side open over here, declare some strict types, delete some mess, make that final, attach our model, and build it out. So status, order, status, draft, wait. This faker, can we just do a wait? No, we need a number between. So what we're going to do is, because it's an integer, we want it at the lowest denominator. So this would be, let's say it's kilos or something like that. So a number between int1 is going to be 100 kilos is our smallest package. Int2 is 10,000 kilos. Shipping. I'm going to add a default in a second. Billing. Going to add something in a minute, and then client ID. We are just going to use a client factory like we did in the last episode. Shipping. So, company. This faker company. And address. Do we have this faker address? Yes, we do. Then billing, we will do the exact same thing in there. So we're just going to create two separate records there. Eventually, this will I'd probably end up building out a specific cast for similar. But right now, I'm not overly fussed. We have ULIDs there. We'll declare some strict types. We'll make this a final class because we don't extend it. And a point to note is the reason I do so many final classes is mostly because it forces me to think before extending anything. It just works for me. It doesn't have to work for you. I'm not saying you should use final classes all the time. I'm saying use them where it works for you, which for me is all the time. So we have a status, and our status is going to be an order status. Then we have shipping, and for now we're just going to do this as array object, billing as array object. That is all we need there. So we can say public function client belongs to return this belongs to, whether related is client, and the foreign key is client ID. Come over to here, and we can say that a client has many orders. So public function orders has many. Type properly today, Steve. Return this has many. Related is an order, and the foreign key is the client ID. So that is connected. We can close all of those. Close all of those. Next, we need our order items. So let's make that. Then we're going to call it a day. So a make model for order item. So let's have a look at the order items for the client and see what they are and why they are. Turning my fan back on because it is getting rather warm in my office again. Clean this up. Declare it static. This should be a ULID primary. So, okay, so we're also going to have a table foreign ULID for the order index constraint cascade. So, ID, quantity, price, and discount. So, table, we are going to want the quantity. This should be an unsigned big integer, quantity default of 0. What I also need is like a table string for the product, because that's going to come from a different database itself. Will the notes and source code be shared? So it's shared currently with GitHub sponsors. All of my live stream content, code and stuff is available to sponsors only. So quantity, then we're going to want price, and then we're going to want a discount. So the product will be an identifier from a different service. The quantity will be the amount of this product that we want. The price will be the price per unit in effect. So whatever price comes back from there will be stored in there. So that if the price ever does change in this database, our order history does not change how much we were charged, and any potential discount. So this will be stored as a percentage. So we can add a comment like stored as percentage, i.e. 100 or 001 as 1%, 100%, but it's stored as a percentage of how much discount you're getting off the total order item. And then the order itself. So come over to order item factory. What we will do is move the table over here, add some strict types. This is just tidy up time, really. Model is going to be order item. So what we need is product, this faker. I'll have to just use a UID, even though I'm using ULIDs. Quantity. We are just going to do this Baker random number or number between actually. And we're going to say int 1 is 1, int 2 is 10. Nothing too crazy. Let's just grab that because we're going to want the same thing for price. So the price is, I don't know, 100, 10,000. The discount is going to be between 1 and 100. The order ID is going to be using the order factory. And then we can come over to the order item itself and fill that information in as well. So final use has URL IDs. Fillable, we are going to be able to fill in the product, the quantity, the price, the discount, and the order ID. That's all I'm going to do for today, other than add the relationships. So we can say order belongs to a specific order, return this belongs to related order class. Foreign key is the order ID. And on the order, we have many items. Public function items has many. Return this has many related order item class. The foreign key for this one is the order ID. And that is it. That is all connected, all good to go. What I can quickly do is just do an migrate. That's all up there. And now git add everything. What did we do? Git commit. Started to create orders and order items. Push that up. So that is today's session done. Tomorrow we're going to pick this back up by finishing off the orders, which is part of a macro service. Once we have done that part, we are going to come back to look at the catalog for products themselves, and then eventually we'll be looking at shipment. So we are doing good. We made pretty good progress so far. Let me share my face. We made some good progress so far. We're still working on the client service. We made the identity service, which is a microservice, the client service, which is more of a macro service. And next, we're going to move on to both the catalog and distribution, which are, again, microservices. So let me know, would you like the catalog and distribution to be built in something other than Laravel? Would you like to see something other than Laravel used? Would you like something else to happen? Let me know in the comments. Could be a different framework, could be a different language. Let's just see what you want to do. But for today, that is all. I want to thank you all for joining me. I want to have a good evening, good day, good night, good morning, whatever time it is. Stay awesome, and I will catch you all tomorrow. See you later.